Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. Time for another show. Time to catch up on what's been happening. I'm a little confused as to the backstory of what appears to have been dominating Twitter for the last couple hours. Which, I don't know if we're going to be able to fix that or not. Not in our wheelhouse, so to speak. But story out of the NFL, so people will be paying attention to it, probably rather than paying attention to, end of the earth, end of democracy in America, whatever, all the important stuff. Most of the planet probably not paying attention to the end of democracy in America, though, or to the end of the planet, for that matter. But, in case you want to feel like you're up to date on what's going on in the minds of your compatriots, your fellow voters, it's about the NFL. The coach of the Raiders got fired because he apparently has some horrific misogynistic and racist email in his past and maybe in his present. I don't know. I haven't caught up on the story. I am unaffected by the tale, of course, because, well, one, I'm not watching the NFL, and two, I guess if I was, I don't know that I would care that much about what happened to the Raiders, but I would care about what happened to somebody who has these horrific emails in his background. But I haven't read them. I don't know how horrific they are. Other people are saying they're horrific. They probably are. And I don't know whether that's anything we're ever going to be able to catch up on or not. I have been focusing on other news. You likely have as well. And you know what? I need to go and... Why don't I go and take a look and see what Bill's been following, besides announcing that we're supposed to know what is going on. How about this? The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live. Let's go find out what we're going to do. Kagro X, me. Okay, my assignment. Reports that Timmy fell down the well. That did happen. I heard about that one. But the Senate needs 60 votes to invoke cloture so they can pass a new law authorizing Lassie to... Oh, never mind. All right, let's talk about the stolen swag bags instead. That's definitely going to be on the agenda. Although that, too, I think is... Well... the background of that story has already been reported, and I guess we just forgot in the crush of other Trump criming. But big story yesterday in the New York Times, sort of a follow-up to all the thievery going on that we knew about in the Trump administration. So big story about where we are with the discovery of all this thievery. Yesterday's story in the New York Times, weird headline on this one. So let's go and open this one up because that's going to have to lead with things. And then we can try and find some stories about what happened in the NFL. I was wondering whether maybe Hunter's news roundup had anything about that. And I'm not sure. It's just not the sort of thing that we ordinarily would spend a great deal of time on, but it's culturally important. People are talking about it. And, we might have to go outside of the front page for that. There's a breaking news diary on it, but it's illustrated with a picture of a kitten playing with a football. So, maybe that's right about our speed when it comes to covering NFL stories. Should we just check in on that one? Maybe before going on to the law-breaking, grifting, and thievery of the Trump administration, where, we'll work our way back to where, our comfort zone of Trump is a low-rate burglar. Third-rate burglar, right? That's the way it used to be. Let me see. Rule of claw. How about that? That explains the kitten illustration. Rule of claw writes, breaking, this was yesterday, posted at 10:19 Eastern, so about when I found out about it, I guess. I think it happened the announcement was made in the middle of Monday Night Football, so that was all they were talking about, apparently. I don't know, once again, just I don't watch presidential speeches, I didn't watch Monday Night Football, nothing. What was I doing? I was getting ready for you in this show. Breaking, not by preparing or anything, I was just thinking about it. John Gruden resigns. Okay, I thought he was fired, but maybe he's got a chance to resign as Las Vegas Raiders coach after racist, homophobic, and misogynist emails. What really struck me about the story and the way it broke was that finally somebody had been fired for their locker room talk. Because that was kind of the excuse that, I don't know, some of the apologists were making. It seemed like people were saying, well, this is the way, it's a rough and tumble world out there in the elite bazillion-dollar world of professional sports, et cetera, et cetera. They can't be expected to act like, millionaires, which is who they are, but whatever. But anyway, finally somebody fired for a locker room talk. This one happening, I guess, in an actual locker room, so you don't even have that excuse. The other guy, the former guy who got away with the locker room talk, hasn't been near a locker room in 100 years, but, I guess golf has a locker room, but he keeps a villa on the course that he changes in, because Donald Trump doesn't strike me as the kind of guy willing to change in front of others if he doesn't have to. Anyway, let's see. Rule of Claw put this up last night. This is a quick hitter for my football friends out there and those interested in keeping score of who is held accountable for their disgusting behavior. Yahoo had the New York Times summary. So this is great. New York Times reported on it. Too long, didn't read. Yahoo summarized it. Too long, didn't read. Rule of Claw is going to tell me what's going on. That I'll read. So what's the excerpt? I have resigned as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, which I also forgot about, that they're from Las Vegas now. I love the Raiders. I don't care about the Raiders, but he says, I love the Raiders and I do not want to be a distraction. It's nothing Raiders fans hate so much as a stunt or distraction, I guess. Thank you to all the players, coaches, staff, and fans of Raider Nation. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt anyone. The New York Times story came out after last week's revelation. Oh, last week's. It took this long? That Gruden had sent an email containing racist comments regarding NFLPA, the Players Association head, DeMaurice Smith. Does he say DeMaurice or DeMaurice? I don't know. I'm never up to date on these things. All right, where were we? Gruden said he wasn't racist, so that settles that. But then on Monday, the New York Times reported that other emails Gruden sent, which were also unearthed as part of the WFT investigation, anyone? I don't know, said Gruden used anti-gay slurs. He referred to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell as, as the word we don't like to use ever. This one being a F word. And, anyway, and a clueless anti-football, which I guess here is, and I think the president has cleared us, the former guy president allowed us to say the P word that he's using here. A clueless anti-football pussy. Well, which, I think is probably a rarity among NFL commissioners, being anti-football. Probably wrong about that. Anyway, Gruden said in an email that Goodell shouldn't have pressured then Los Angeles Rams coach Jeff Fisher to draft, quote, queers, a reference to Michael Sam. Sam was the first openly gay player drafted by the NFL in 2014. And was there a pressure campaign for that? That's also something that I didn't happen to pay attention to at the time. Let's see. New York Times report also said that Gruden in emails criticized the hiring of women as referees and also the acceptance of players protesting for racial justice during the national anthem. Uh-oh. That we care about. The Times said Gruden also exchanged photos of topless women with Allen, whoever Allen was, including one of WFT's cheerleaders. Wow. That's uncomfortable for a work environment, I would think. There's no excuse from a grown man in charge of leading men. Well, that's true. I mean, just a professional. People forget that, football coaches are professionals too, and you kind of have to conduct yourself with an eye toward that. After all, and it's like it's a hard thing for them to remember. I mean, football coaches have always, sort of said that they were modeling themselves as, leaders and developers of young men into, into grown men, because you start with the peewee football, etc. So it's kind of always supposed to have been part of the model. But then somewhere along the line, they also said, racism and homophobia and misogyny is kind of part of our model. So that's okay, too. And all right. Well, let's see. There's no excuse for this. There's no excuse for this for a 12-year-old. This is unabashed, unadulterated bigotry and misogyny at its worst. But one thing it's not is cancel culture, right? Okay, that's the excuse that they're trying to make. Rule of law, probably quite right about that. I feel like I would like to have some more background on it, but I feel like maybe you wouldn't. This might be a waste of time, but we kind of have to catch up on the news. Here's a comment about it. Truro Renfro saying, "Thank you for letting me know that John Gruden has resigned, but more importantly for informing me that the Raiders have moved to Las Vegas." All right, yeah. I guess we're up to right about the same speed on that one. But important note, and like I said, it'll carry a lot of cultural significance. And I did see somebody saying this morning who had brought this up. Our Twitter friend, apropos of something, who tweets as AOS Radio, apropos of something, saying, how long before Gruden shows up at Mar-a-Lago wearing Kid Rock golf pants and making a dick pic with Dummold? Dummold. Kind of like that one. And that might be where he's destined. Or maybe he's the next Republican nominee for Senate from Nevada or something like that. Or I don't know where Gruden calls home. But wherever it is, if they have a Democratic senator, that person will be challenged by John Gruden, I guess. Fighting against cancel culture for being held accountable for his own communications. I also did see some defenders saying something about blah, blah, blah. What would you do if somebody looked at every email you've sent for the past 10 years? I don't know how far back these emails go. I do feel like I kind of want to find out, but maybe not necessarily on the air. I guess if things get really slow, we'll go and read the New York Times or perhaps the Yahoo summary of the New York Times and gradually work our way back to more detailed summaries of what happened. Other news that's dominating Twitter chatter that's more in our wheelhouse is, for instance, let's see, Texas governor, allegedly, Greg Abbott, has issued another one of these executive orders, essentially a mandate against mandates. And I think it was TPM that used the clever headline on it. See if I can find the thing. There we are. Abbott puts out mandate banning vaccine mandates because government mandates are bad. You get the idea of what's going on here. He's forbidding, he claims, forbidding any entity, private, public, or otherwise, from imposing vaccine mandates inside the borders of Texas because Texans need to be free to choose for themselves whether or not they're going to die from this virus. And no one is allowed to ask their employees to do anything because everyone knows something about private business and yada yada, and it's all up to them, and the government can't mandate it. Even if they're mandating against mandates, they can't mandate, except I can because Gimbitarianism. So they have the best headline, so maybe we'll read their story. Christina Cabrera wrote the story anyway, don't know about the headline. This story or the illustration, okay, so it's a different picture, but I guess a stock photo that they used to illustrate the story with Abbott in one of those goofy novelty uniform-ish looking shirts that they sometimes give to the governor that has his name and then and governor underneath, the way they give flight jackets to the president when he visits an air base or something like that. Anyway, so there he is looking semi-official. Welcome to the Upside Down, it says here at the beginning of the article. Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order yesterday that banned COVID-19 vaccine requirements across the board, including for employees and customers of private businesses. I'm curious about how far he thinks this thing reaches and whether or not, for instance, military personnel stationed in Texas can be ordered by the United States military to take this vaccine or not, or whether he's going to reverse Jade Helm this thing and take over and try and Texasize the military. I wouldn't put it past him because he's not a very smart guy. Anyway, under the order, no entity, quote, no entity, can require the vaccination of anyone who, quote, objects to such vaccination for any reason of personal conscience, based on a religious belief, or for medical reasons, including prior recovery from COVID-19. That's the latest, hottest excuse for not thinking you need the vaccine, saying, I've already had COVID, so I'm totally immune naturally. As a result, Greg's been harping on this, and rightly so. It varies greatly, once again, just as a reminder, in case you also have had COVID-19 and think you don't need the vaccine, in which case you're probably not listening to the show. But if you know anybody who thinks this, there's no way of telling what level of immunity you actually have. You may have some, you may have none. You may have a lot, you may have a little. It may last forever, it may last 3 months, it may last less. Very wide variance in terms of what sort of immunity it gives you. And so, I guess if logic applied to this, you could say to somebody, well, if you're worried about taking the vaccine because you're worried about what it introduces to your body and you don't need it anyway because you've already had COVID-19 and your body fought it off naturally, I guess you could say, well, your body's pretty adept at this stuff. What are you afraid of? It fought off COVID-19 by itself. It'll fight off whatever small threat you think might exist in the vaccine as well. If you're one of the people who think it's some sort of live virus vaccine, which isn't, you'll be able to fight that off because you've already proven that your body can handle that. But that's not what it is, so that wouldn't make any particular sense. So if you're afraid of mRNA, too late, you've already got that. If you're afraid of microchips, I don't know. I guess at that point, there's no dealing with people. But whatever. People think that they can do it that way and think they can duck the requirements that way. And the truth is, you just don't know what's going on in there, and you might as well shore up. Besides, they're giving people who have also had 2 shots boosters. So what makes you think that your quote-unquote natural immunity is better than the 2 vaccines? Nothing. You just want to think that, so you do. The order accused Biden of bullying many private entities. That's 2 quotes there. Quote, bullying, and quote, many private entities. Many, lots and lots of them. Several, 2 weeks, whatever, some sort of vague pronouncement. But accused Biden of bullying many private entities with his sweeping vaccine mandates, which this one totally doesn't. The vaccine, quote, should remain voluntary and never forced, Abbott argued, even as he admitted that the shot, quote, is safe, effective, and our best defense against the virus. So, whatever. I guess that's so he can be accused of not being an anti-vaxxer, but he actually is. Otherwise, he wouldn't do this. And back in the day, when the shoe was on the other foot and Democrats protested something or other like, say the war in Iraq, the answer was, well, you are objectively pro-Saddam. So now we can say that he is objectively pro-COVID and should be saying that. And if that's at all effective with the voting public, you can be sure, I think, according to the news articles I've read in the last couple of days, Democrats will refuse to say it. Not sure why, but people have reached that conclusion. Pelosi, let's see. Oh, this is on to the next news item, which is also worthy of discussion and probably something we want to wait and get into with Joan. But the headline being, Pelosi tells Dems they'll need to, quote, do fewer things well with BBB, the Build Back Better reconciliation bill. The contest here in how to go forward between those who say, well, with a lower amount of money, if that's what we agree to, and it looks like they have, should we do just a few things and fully fund them throughout, I guess, the 10-year lifespan that we can give a new program under reconciliation? Or should we try and get to everything that we said we wanted to do, but do it for fewer numbers of years, a lower number of years, for fewer years. Get the grammar right on that. And, not give up on any of the priorities, but just admit, okay, well, we can't fully fund them all, even though they're sunset for 10 years because we're using reconciliation to pass them. We can do lower amounts, if we wanted to cut the rate, the price tag of the bill in half, the simplistic math would be, well, why don't we do them all for 5 years? I don't know if that really works out that way logistically, but that was one of the options. And Pelosi, I guess, weighing in on the side of, why don't we fully fund a few of our top priorities instead and do some things and do them well. I don't know whether it's the right choice, but seems to be a coin toss now until we hear some of the arguments one way or the other. All right, catch up with the T here and scroll on down just to see what else TPM thinks is important, because I might as well outsource this to them at this point. Oh, yes, here's some news. Alan West has been released from the hospital, which, okay, la-di-da. You're not supposed to root for people to die from COVID, so, we didn't. I was just saying, I wasn't sure how to root in that situation. Alan West is a terrible, terrible person, and of course, he's been a terrible, terrible anti-vaxxer, and he's hurting a lot of people by encouraging them not to take the vaccine, as he didn't. But he did run right away to take all the monoclonal antibody treatments that he could get his hands on because he's a political celebrity, after claiming that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were going to prevent him from getting the virus and keep him out of the hospital if he did get it, and all of that turning out not to be true. Certainly, third time's the charm. The monoclonal antibody treatment does appear to work. It's expensive, and you have to wait till you get COVID to use it. But, all right, that's the most scientific thing he did. So it sounds like he's being released from the hospital. He was in bad shape. He had some pneumonia as a result of his COVID, which, for other people probably would have been a learning experience. Not for Alan West, though. Like I said, you're not supposed to be out there rooting for COVID to beat Alan West. So, like I did over the weekend, I rooted for a tie, which is what you do in these situations. Of course, Norm Macdonald told us what that means, and I'm just, was hoping for that, but it didn't come to fruition. Gosh, that's so annoying. Okay, let's see. I guess if I'm going to do a news roundup, I might as well read Hunter's news roundup from Daily Kos instead and get to some of those stories, and then over to the crazy Donald Trump is a thief story. So let's see. In the roundup news roundup, in news roundup news, we have this. Trump's allies defy Congress as Trump himself celebrates an insurrectionist. We didn't get to mention that story yesterday, but Hunter reminds us that it's necessary to stay up to date. In the news today, he says last night, which was yesterday, ironically enough, Trump allies implicated in Donald Trump's seditious plan to topple the government continue to defy House subpoenas, and House investigators do not seem to be responding with the urgency the situation requires. They never do. It never seems that way. But I know they're alarmed about it, but we'll see what they do about it. That's everyone's big question. And there was a post about it on the front page of Daily Kos just the other day, too. We can peek in on that one. But that one, as I understand it, they plan to refer to the Department of Justice for prosecution. Those wheels will turn slowly, but they don't need to go the inherent contempt route at this point. So they probably won't. It's controversial, and they don't want to do anything controversial. You know how that goes. All right, so where were we with this? Trump himself taped a video praising the insurrectionist who was shot and killed as the January 6th mob assaulted officers in their attempt to hunt down lawmakers that day, part of a continuing effort to portray the Trump-allied seditionists as heroes. Not a lot of good news today, says Hunter. Here's some of what you may have missed. Good. We probably did. Let's see. Links to the stories. When is the House Select Committee going to enforce subpoenas? Good question. Anti-vaxxers offer a choose-your-own-adventure lie about the canceled Southwest flights. Yes, another good. This is probably a good way we should start every day with his news roundup when we don't have Greg's. Another story that turns out to be, less than true. But the social media rage on this was that the Southwest airline employees, including pilots, and perhaps led by pilots, were calling in sick, using whatever sick time they had remaining at work because they were protesting the Southwest Airlines vaccine mandate, along with every other airline. Southwest was doing the same as everybody else, asking their employees to either get vaccinated or find another line of work, or at least with somebody else. And allegedly, the Southwest Airlines pilots were planning on resisting all the way up to the deadline and then getting themselves fired, and so therefore taking all their vacation time before they got fired and causing a huge shortage of personnel, and it was causing Southwest Airlines to cancel flights all over the place. That was the social media story. That means, of course, that there's a full-blown, like, traditional media arm of the Republican Party, Fox News and now OAN and all the other operators who basically cosplay as news and use the various media available to them to appear to broadcast to people whose clocks are still blinking 12. It's all the same. They see somebody in a suit with one of those graphics behind them. That's news. So they say Southwest airline flight cancellations were all about this massive sick out by the pilots. The pilots, though, they've got a union, and the union has nothing to say about it. And no pilots have said anything about it. It's very interesting, like a breakthrough yesterday in two areas of people making sense. Not that they were being heard by the people who really need to hear them making sense, but pointing out, first of all, the Southwest pilots in the union saying, no, nothing like that going on. There's no stop work action going on. There's no organized sick out. We've not discussed anything like this. We're, concerned about the mandate, but we're not recommending any action by our member pilots. So, the story that there's some sort of organized sick out is just not true. That, of course, didn't do anything to quash the rumors, so they just kept going with it. But somebody did point out on Twitter yesterday, why are all the stories about the Southwest airline pilots doing this are all second and third hand things proven in their mind by screenshots from somebody else's Facebook page? Why nothing from a pilot anywhere? Good question. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. Let's continue on. We might as well just follow the path here that's been, the breadcrumbs spread out here by Hunter for us. So, yeah, it turns out that the Southwest flights thing is, the Pilots Association, anyway, is denying it. I mean, I guess there could be some truth to it anyway, and they want to deny it, but that, I thought, was the better point, was, why would such a massive and organized, strike in the non-labor sense, but, striking as in striking a blow, why would such a tactic go unremarked upon by all the people involved in it? If they wanted to make a public protest and make a point, that none of them could pick up one of the smartphones and turn it around and make a TikTok video saying, I'm a Southwest Airlines pilot. Or nobody could even fake that. Like, go and get a fake airline pilot. It's Halloween. Go get a costume. Go down to Spirit Halloween in one of your empty storefronts and pick up an airline pilot looking hat and say, I'm a pilot for Southwest Airlines. And say what you're doing and why. But no one has done this, and I thought that was a pretty good point. There's no end of screenshots of somebody, and a screenshot from a Facebook page. Like, obviously, you're not even the primary source of the Facebook page. My cousin's friend's Facebook page said that his uncle's brother's, what have you, cousin from, what Caribbean island were we saying when it was, the vaccine. All right. Anyway, it's always second, third, fourth, 15th hand that they heard this is totally happening, and no Southwest pilot will say anything about it. That seems very odd. Similarly, I guess, good comment also on Twitter the other day, no end of second, third, fourth hand stories about, the reason I'm not getting the vaccine is so many people have died from the vaccine. You ever run into one of these? I mean, I can't believe that there are such people that think this, but, so many people died or were injured, hurt in one way or another, harmed by the vaccine, and it's everywhere, and millions of people are having these things happen to them, and I'm not getting the vaccine because I'm not a sucker. I'm not going to take one of those. And somebody pointing out, no shortage, there's no end to the tearful, what sometimes turns out to be deathbed conversions on the vaccine. People who were anti-vaxxers and loud and proud about it might find themselves on the Herman Cain Awards or Sorry Anti-Vaxxer because of how loud and vocal and pushy they were about being anti-vax, and then they have the disease and they're dying and they're on their deathbed and they're pleading with everybody, I wish I could have gotten it. I hope it's not too late for my children. Please, everybody, don't do like I did. Get the vaccine. All right, But there's millions more still out there saying I'm not getting the vaccine and I'm happy still with my decision. And of course, there are some people who were on their deathbed who said I still wouldn't get the vaccine. There are some of those. But for all of this, they point out, where are the tearful deathbed videos from people who said I did get the vaccine and I was fooled and I was harmed by all the things that all the anti-vaxxers said were going to happen to me, did happen to me, and why didn't I listen? And I haven't seen a single one. Or even the second or third hand report of a single one. Where are all these things? And the answer is, of course, they're not happening. I mean, I guess it's possible that if it were to happen to anybody, it's happening only and exclusively among the millions that it's happening to, according to anti-vaxxers, only to people who are either shy or have dropped their phones in the water, perhaps in reaction to the shot. First it happens, I got sweats, and then I was trembling, and then as the Caribbean fellow who actually turned out to have some venereal disease, I think, found out his testicles swelled to 17 times normal. I don't know what the ratio was. But if that were to happen, I would probably drop my cell phone too. And, if you lived on a Caribbean island, there's some chance it would fall in the water because you're surrounded by water. You could see the logic of this, can't you? Anyway, that's why all of them are unable to make TikTok videos. And that's where we stand today. Boom. Science. Okay. What else? Yes, right. There was the Trump's praise for Ashley Babbitt, the woman, the insurrectionist killed on January 6th. Apparently it was her birthday the other day, or I guess we might say would have been her birthday. And Trump, because he bears no particular responsibility to comport himself as an adult or whatever, having been a former president, or being a former president, having been president. He filmed a video message to the family, insisting that she was a martyr and a hero, and the people responsible for her death, who he imagines is someone other than himself, need to be held to account, and there needs to be justice for Ashley, which, as we pointed out yesterday, Armando observed probably means trying her posthumously, so that's not going to happen. But yeah, extraordinarily irresponsible thing, again, from Trump. just thought we would note it for the record. Anyway, a couple of other items here that aren't top line news for us usually, but we might as well mention them because Hunter thinks they're important because they are. New report shows 25% of all U.S. infrastructure is at risk because of climate change related flooding. Another item on The Last Straw. Latino civil rights group ends ties with Facebook following whistleblower report. That's got to be pretty interesting. And he notes here, trending from the community. Climate brief. China's cities begin to darken as warming enhanced rainfall floods their coal mines. Yikes. They have the worst weather over there in China, I must say. Every time I wake up in the morning and there's a Weather Channel disaster video, I have the Weather Channel app, and maybe one of the only apps that I have any alerts on for, because it's supposed to be, I think, there's a tornado in your neighborhood, look out. But as it turns out, it's usually, there's funky video from China and you need to see it. That's what it alerts me about, or whatever. Anyway, anytime that they're like, look at this amazing video of something horrific happening, and I say, oh my God, oh my gosh, how come I haven't heard about it? And the answer is, one, because it happened in China, and then two, how could such a thing happen? And the answer is usually, because it's in China. Very scary place, it seems, if the Weather Channel is to be believed about what it's like in China. All of their fun tourism attractions are, in fact, death traps, according to the Weather Channel. I mean, I'm sure, they got a lot of people there in China, and I'm sure that millions of people visit these places safely, but somebody with a camera keeps getting hurt. That's what's the sad part. All right, well, anyway, what else have we got here? Oh, yes, this note. Black children arrested at school in Tennessee. All part of, quote, God's mission, according to the judge. They got some weird judges down there in Tennessee. And there were some weird exposés over the weekend about how certain, let's say, isolated areas of Tennessee, low population counties where elected judges sort of, reign supreme and unchecked, and nobody checks in on what people in rural Tennessee are doing with their local criminal justice system. And, you'd be surprised and shocked. Or, you'd be shocked anyway, if not necessarily surprised. That brings me to something else I observed over the weekend. So I'm basically telling you about my Twitter weekend. I noticed some right-wing loon or another. I think he's getting set for a congressional run in Tennessee, probably in this same area, as a matter of fact, and is touting his endorsement. I don't remember the guy's name, and you don't want to know either. Touting his endorsement by Madison Cawthorn, if that gives you some indication of what this guy is like. But he was proudly circulating video from Wyoming, because white people are all over the place in Wyoming, and he needed a white person video. It was a video of a white teenage girl defying her school's mask mandate and eventually getting herself arrested for trespassing when she's suspended and asked to leave the premises. My only remark upon it is that it is the most pleasant and easy to watch school arrest video that I have seen to date on Twitter. Most of the school arrest videos circulated on Twitter are, as it happens, because this is probably the case with most school arrests, targeting people of color instead, and they're arrested in much less pleasant manner. So what was really interesting about that particular episode to me was that inadvertently, both the teenager being arrested and the lunatic congressional candidate circulating it were inadvertently giving us all a great lesson in critical race theory, which, of course, is banned, and now we have to execute those two. It's very sad, but it's their own law, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, inadvertent lesson in critical race theory provided by the people who show that, if you're white and protesting your mask mandate and ask to leave because you're trespassing and you refuse, they do nice things for you, like, well, we're going to arrest you now, and do you understand what that means? We're going to put the handcuffs on you. Ready? Here come the handcuffs. As opposed to, say, the various videos that have been circulating over the years of black girl in class in South Carolina asked to leave for disciplinary reasons by the teacher and refusing to go to the principal's office, and they call the school resource officer, who then puts her in a chokehold from behind, pulls her out of her seat, or doesn't pull her out of the seat, pulls her up, but he can't get her out of the chair, so he flips her desk over on top of her. Remember this one? This is from like 2015 or so, and then drags her across the room and throws her into a wall. That's how you're removed for trespassing if you're black in South Carolina. But if you're white in Wyoming, I mean, what else are you going to be in Wyoming, quite honestly? But if you're white in Wyoming, they let you know. Here come the handcuffs. Here comes the handcuff choo-choo. Are we ready? Wee, choo-choo. Put your hands behind your back. Very pleasant. Which, I mean, that's how arrests for trespass ought to be for everybody. I'm not saying they have to beat the crap out of white people. I'm saying be better to everybody. But we've been over that before. Now, on to Donald Trump and his thievery. We might as well try and get that one in here. Just for kicks. White tiger and cheetah furs. A mess of Trump gift exchanges. That's the title they're working with over at the New York Times, where they're very serious about these things. Michael Schmidt writing this piece. And like I said, it's been reported before. I don't know. I guess I noted it in passing at the time. This all stems, of course, from Trump's early trip to Saudi Arabia, when he chose to make it the first official state visit of his presidency, and everybody was kind of shocked by that. And then they saw, they were just basically like piling rugs and gold at his feet. And everybody wondered, what are they going to do with all this stuff? This is Donald Trump you're giving this stuff to. And there's rules about whether or not the president can accept gifts personally and whether he's allowed to keep them and what's supposed to happen to them. And Donald Trump wasn't going to abide by any of those rules. Well, apparently he did eventually abide by some of them, but not willingly and not quickly. But anyway, I guess my only point on this side note is that the Daily Beast did, among others, did report this stuff. I just happened to see, because it was Ken Klippenstein who reported it for them. He was therefore all over Twitter saying, "This is old news. We knew all about this. Look, here's all my articles." And he's right, and it was good reporting. And of course, the New York Times made no acknowledgement of that reporting whatsoever. But they thought they had a new angle here, and they kind of did. So we'll read about it. Subheader on this piece: gift exchanges between U.S. and foreign leaders, a highly regulated process, devolved into sometimes risible shambles, interesting, during the Trump administration. That's a fun way of putting it. So, the reporting today, the Saudi royal family showered Donald J. Trump and his entourage on his first trip abroad as president with dozens of presents, including 3 robes made with white tiger and cheetah fur, and a dagger with a handle that appeared to be ivory. Of course, all from endangered species, etc., and illegal in their own right, but also just calculated to trigger the greed instinct in Donald Trump. It turned up to 11. Basically outfitting the guy as Liberace and saying this is a huge compliment, huge compliment, and you should take this. Anyway, little that followed went right. Little that preceded it went right either. A White House lawyer determined that possession of the furs and dagger most likely violated the Endangered Species Act, but the Trump administration held on to them and failed to disclose them as gifts received from a foreign government. That's a chin stroker for you. Why would they do that? Especially if it was reported widely at the time that they had received them. On the last full day of Mr. Trump's presidency, so January 2021. These are gifts he got in early 2017. So anyway, on the last full day of Trump's presidency, the White House handed them over to the General Services Administration, which, of course, in this case, because of the nature of the gifts, was the wrong agency. They should instead have given them to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which ended up seizing the gifts this summer, I guess, taking possession of them from the GSA. I guess here, I don't know. I don't like to give them much leeway, Trump's, because also they have a staff that they could rely on, supposedly, and say, all right, I realize I'm not supposed to keep these gifts. Where do I give them? And I don't know. Somebody probably said, I don't know, every other stupid gift we've gotten that we have to give up, we give to the GSA. And, who could blame them for not necessarily realizing off the bat, well, oh yeah, right, the handle of this dagger looks like it's ivory, and that's from that's an illegal trade because endangered species. Same with the white tiger and cheetah fur robes, endangered species. That would be violation of the Endangered Species Act, and so we give it to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Oh, yeah, well, that is kind of stupid. But you have people for that. But whatever. Anyway, at that point, that is when the Fish and Wildlife Service seized the gifts, I guess, or is it the last day of the administration is that point. But at that point, there was a surprise. The furs from an oil-rich family worth billions of dollars were fake. How interesting is that? So maybe they could have gone to the General Services Administration. But that's just a fun twist to the story, right? Of all the things that could be the twist in this, that the Saudis shower Trump with gifts to be expected, that he F's up or purposely screws things up and stays in possession of the gifts. I don't know whether it was parading around in them in the White House or what, but holds on to them until the last day of the administration and yada, yada. But then for all of it to turn out, on top of it all, that they thought that they could fool this guy because it was easy, and it's easy to think he's an idiot because he is, fool them with not only something fake, but something that, basically you probably should have suspected might have been a fake right from the get-go, because why would the ruler of one country give the ruler of another country something that's illegal in his country in front of everybody? But whatever. And so it turns out that they were fake, and that's weird. Wildlife inspectors and special agents determined the linings of the robes were dyed to mimic tiger and cheetah patterns and were not comprised of protected species, said Tyler Cherry, a spokesman for the Interior Department, which oversees the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, right? So it's the Endangered Species Act, overseen by the Interior Department, specifically U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That would be difficult to figure out. For an idiot, anyway. Officials at the Saudi embassy in Washington declined to comment, but we're lucky this time they also didn't kill any of the journalists asking questions. The tale of the furs is, get it, tale, is but one example of how gift exchanges between the United States and foreign leaders, a highly regulated process intended to shield administrations from questions of impropriety, which never disturbed Donald Trump, devolved into sometimes risible shambles during the Trump administration. Risible, not often used. The State Department's Inspector General is investigating allegations that Mr. Trump's political appointees, this is another angle on things. And by the way, before I even tell you the terrible story here, the State Department is generally the one in charge of telling the president, okay, remember, one, you can't keep the gifts, and two, where to give them, what do you do with them if you can't keep them? What's the process for turning them over to the government? They would have been the ones to say, all right, General Services Administration for this, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for that. But, of course, the State Department wasn't functioning during the Trump administration. What were they doing? Well, they were doing this. The State Department's Inspector General is investigating allegations that Mr. Trump's political appointees at the department walked off with gift bags worth thousands of dollars that were meant for foreign leaders at the G7 summit planned for Camp David, after many attempts to plant it at a Trump property, right? At Camp David in 2020. The meeting, of course, canceled because of the coronavirus pandemic, but also because the planning for it was a shambles. But canceled because of the coronavirus pandemic. The bags contained dozens of items purchased with government funds, including leather portfolios, pewter trays, and marble trinket boxes emblazoned with the presidential seal or the signatures of Mr. Trump and his wife, Melania Trump. So all this stuff was supposed to be in the swag bags for the G7 leaders when they came to the summit. And now here's a question. Was there an eighth one for Vladimir Putin? Because he kept insisting he was going to invite him. But you remember the whole story about how he wanted to have it at his Doral resort, and then that fell apart and yada yada. But he actually like hoodwinked or forced was it the State Department? I don't know who was doing the planning and the Secret Service forced them to say, oh yeah, we checked venues all over the country, and Doral the best one in terms of security. And it was, in fact, among the worst, but they forced the Secret Service to say, it'll be fine, no problem. And then, anyway, the whole thing collapsed. Then they tried to move it to Camp David. And then everybody was like, well, we're not even coming, because what is there to talk about with Donald Trump? So the gift bags were wanting at that point, or went unclaimed. And this is kind of interesting. I guess they get to it later in the story about the mechanics of how this happened. So we'll read on. What else? The Inspector General continues to pursue the whereabouts of a $5,800 bottle of Japanese whiskey given to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Pompeo said he never received it. Oh, boy. And also a 22-karat gold coin given to another State Department official. In both cases, these fantastic gifts. I don't know what happened to it. Yeah, I didn't take it. Well, where is it? It was given to you. I don't know. A gold coin and a $5,800 bottle of whiskey. Sure. There's also a question about whether the former second lady, Karen Pence, wrongly took 2 gold-toned place card holders from the Prime Minister of Singapore without paying for them. That's part of the process, by the way. If you're given these gifts, you are given the opportunity in many cases, maybe not all, but in many cases, if you want to keep them, personally keep them, you can buy them at whatever the market value they can determine for it from the United States government. But Karen Pence, it is alleged, took these things and didn't pay. What a crazy thing to imagine that a Trumpster would do. In addition, the Trump administration never disclosed, for some reason, that Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and a top White House advisor, received 2 swords and a dagger from the Saudis, although he did pay. He paid some money, apparently, so that's good. He at least followed that part of the rule. He paid $47,920 for them, along with 3 other gifts in February after he left office. So, in other words, they gave it to him in, whatever, was it October 2017, something like that. And whatever, I don't know whether he hung them in the house. I don't know what he did with them. But he kept them until 2021, and then it was like, fine. All right, I don't need this trouble. I'll pay because, whatever, pocket change, $47,920. To be sure, Mr. Trump's handling of foreign gifts is not at the top of his critics' list of administration offenses. Well, it really is. I mean, emoluments in general really should be. And there is no evidence that he or Mrs. Trump took any gifts to which they were not entitled. They just took their sweet time about entitling themselves to them, I guess. But ethics experts said the problems reflected larger issues within the Trump presidency. And the State Department thing, that's still hanging out there. We'll see if we get back to that. Whether this was indifference, sloppiness, or the great train robbery, it shows such a cavalier attitude to the law and the regular process of government, said Stanley M. Brand, a criminal defense lawyer, ethics expert, and former top lawyer for the House of Representatives. I've seen his name around several times. The State Department declined to address the specifics of how the Trump administration handled gifts, but said in a statement that it, quote, takes seriously its role in reporting the disposition of certain gifts received by the U.S. government or by U.S. government employees, and that it was, quote, investigating the whereabouts of gifts that are unaccounted for and the circumstances that led to their disappearance. Probably the circumstances that led to their disappearance was they was stolen. But, you got to prove that. This article is based on public documents and others produced by the federal government under the Freedom of Information Act, interviews with current and former government officials, and on-the-record responses to questions from several government departments and agencies. Here's where Ken Klippenstein had a problem with the reporting on Twitter today. The Freedom of Information Act request that revealed these documents wasn't made by the New York Times. It was made apparently by, well, maybe by others as well, but by Ken Klippenstein and the Daily Beast. That's how they got to report the receipt of these gifts in 2017. But no acknowledgement of that work and who did it way back when. That's sort of par for the course for the New York Times. The documents include an index of gifts that Mr. Trump and his family received in Saudi Arabia in 2017 that the National Archives provided to two Democratic senators, Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. And here are some pictures of some of these fur robes. And I just don't know who would wear those things around. But, you get a gift. You're not supposed to look a gift Saudi in the mouth, so you just take it. Anyway, the details about the missing gifts and the other widespread problems with them have not been previously reported. Politico reported in August that the State Department's Inspector General was investigating some 20 types of missing gifts. This next section of the article, 82 gifts from the Saudis. The nation's founders were so concerned that European nobility could co-opt U.S. officials with lavish gifts that they included in the Constitution a clause making it illegal for an official to take anything of worth from a foreigner. You remember foreign emoluments? And then he just started laundering them through his hotel. Another big story we haven't discussed lately. That, too, in the news. In 1966, Congress passed a law detailing how a U.S. official could keep a gift of only relatively minimal value, now capped at $415. Subsequent amendments defined gifts as government property and created a standardized process for how officials were to deal with them. To add transparency, provisions require administrations to annually disclose the gifts given to U.S. officials by foreigners and their appraised value. The laws have no criminal penalties. Wow. Although legal experts said that anyone caught taking government property could be prosecuted for theft, and should be. The Trump administration's gift problems, gosh, they're such problems. They date from the president's trip to in May of 2017 to Saudi Arabia. Okay. I think Ken Klippenstein's reporting was from October. That's how long it took to get that information. But yeah, okay. I remember it was 2017 that he went right away to Saudi Arabia. And where did he go? Again, Saudi Arabia, whose leaders were jubilant that Mr. Trump had chosen the kingdom. It was a choice. Chosen the kingdom for his first visit abroad and was embracing them after years of tensions with the Obama administration. The Saudis have a history of giving lavish gifts to American presidents, and Mr. Trump and his aides appeared to receive a generous bounty. Here, we might as well remind you of policy on this show that when we talk about the Saudis, we mean specifically not people from Saudi Arabia, but the Saud family, for whom the country is named, because they own the whole thing. It's a very weird and ancient, well, not weird necessarily, but ancient, used to be the case in Europe too, ancient form of government. We don't use it anymore, and by we I mean they, the Europeans, the people who we share some languages with, let's say. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Boy, just checking in on the Twitter comments and see if we can catch up with them. Ricky commenting on our stories from earlier in the show. Just letting everybody know. I'm sure if somebody looked at my emails over the last 10 years, back to John Gruden's story, right? All they would find is Amazon order confirmations, Twitter notifications, and the occasional email to a college instructor saying I wasn't coming in. Yeah, my email is a lot busier than that, but I'm sure they'd find some things that I would rather that people I know didn't weren't reminded of or didn't know that I was asking questions about or talking about. I guess, business stuff, maybe, but probably not. Well, I'm pretty careful about most things, but surely there's something in there that I would rather not necessarily be revealed. But yeah, if you're looking for racist, misogynistic commentary, I don't think so. Not much. I don't think there's anything that even borders on it, but you never know. I mean, you always find out that you said something that you didn't realize at the time was as sensitive as it turns out to be later. Definitely had that happen, at some point. But I don't email people with N-word anything in there, and I don't use it, so it doesn't make any sense to search the email for it. But if you want to, go ahead, have at it. I'm sure you can embarrass me with some close associates, maybe business, I guess. Probably not going to happen with friends, because I don't spend any time emailing about other friends behind people's back either. We're pretty frank about things in email. I don't know. So yeah, most people probably not going to find themselves in trouble. And if you do, well, okay, answer for it. What else? Oh yes, right. Ricky also commenting about the Texas mandate against mandates. She said, I said this earlier, but of course it seems that in Texas, if you want the vaccine, that's your choice. But if you want an abortion, someone should sue you. And of course the doctor and anybody who helped you get there, including your Uber driver. Okay. Well, moving on back to the gift thievery. We left off talking about all the lavish and generous bounty of gifts that the Trump people got when they were in Saudi Arabia. The State Department disclosed a list of 82 gifts from the Saudis to the Trump administration officials on that May 2017 trip in response to a Freedom of Information Act request filed shortly after Mr. Trump returned home by someone else. Okay. The gifts ranged from ordinary ones like sandals and scarves, I guess that's ordinary, to expensive ones like furs and daggers. 9 of the most expensive presents, the 3 furs, 3 swords, and 3 daggers, were sent to the White House Gifts Unit to be assessed and appraised, but never appeared on any of the Trump State Department's legally required annual filings for foreign gifts, according to a review of government documents. Now, are they required annually? Well, there's no penalty for not filing them, so I don't know how you can say they're required, but, once again, another one of these laws written at a time when, of course, you would comply. You have to comply. It says it's required. And, it'd be embarrassing, like you'd be forced to resign if you were regularly refusing to comply. Well, these laws weren't written for Trump, right? They weren't written with a Trump-type person in mind. And, again, interesting, like I was wondering, why comply with any of the process? Like, why not just pocket the stuff if you're Trump? If you're planning on stealing it or just making use of it while you're president and then giving it away or whatever, why bother with initially handing it over to the State Department and just starting the ball rolling on documentation that's going to get you caught? But when I was reading it, maybe the light goes on here, right? He sends the gifts to the White House Gifts Unit to be assessed and appraised. Then they never appear on any of the reports. So basically, this is Trump saying, I want to know how much these things are worth. And normally, I know what I'll do. I'll have it appraised. Oh, but then he realizes, the appraisers, they always want money for things. And I'm sure he used to work out deals in private life. Well, I'll tell you what. Well, you appraise it for me, and I'll tell everybody that you are Donald Trump's exclusive appraiser. And you'll get so much business from this. It'll be unbelievable. You'll be huge. Everyone will want to use you. I can think of 25 people in Trump Tower alone that'll immediately have you appraise their stuff. And it's probably right. But that's probably how he used to avoid paying for appraisals, which he was probably pretty proud of. But why bother with all of that? And, why bother with the trouble of having to tell people, I'll make you famous, when he finds out, the government will appraise it for me for free because they think I'm following the rules and I'm having them appraised as is required, and then I'll hand over the gifts. But instead, I want a free appraisal from the government. And then when I find out they're worth $1 million, I'm going to walk around with them and say, I got this thing from the king of Saudi Arabia. It's worth $1 million and it's mine. Oh, mine. And then later, I guess, maybe on his way out the door, somebody said, you're not really allowed to take this. And I don't know whether he wasn't paying attention. Whatever's in that box, you can take it. I don't know why he gave this stuff up. That I didn't imagine he would do. Anyway, it was not until January 19th, 2021, that the White House sent the 9 gifts to the General Services Administration, according to a statement from the agency. So given in May of 2017 and appraised, never declared, and then finally handed over to the wrong agency. But you can sort of forgive that. 17, almost 4 years later. So what was happening with those robes? Maybe I don't want to know. After the New York Times inquired this summer about why the agency was in possession of items in violation of the Endangered Species Act, the General Services Administration alerted the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which sent an agent in July to collect the furs at a government warehouse in Springfield, Virginia. That was right next to the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The agent also took the dagger, which a visiting Qatari official had given to the Trump White House in Saudi Arabia. Oh, interesting. So, slightly different provenance of the gift there. A Qatari official, before they had their big blow up with the Saudis, I guess, was already in Saudi Arabia and said, well, let me give him a gift too. Inspectors examined the items, discovering more problems as they determined that the furs had been dyed and were fake. The dagger's handle, quote, appears to possibly contain tooth or bone of some variety. The materials of elephant tusk. That would be, like ivory would be. It is a tooth or bone. Although additional laboratory analysis would be required to identify the species, the Interior Department said. But of course, if you did a laboratory experiment to determine it, that would be looking at DNA, and it would change your DNA, so we can't do it. Coronavirus, something. I don't know. They'll come up with an excuse. Let's see. Is there a nice picture of the dagger here? I've always been a little confused about the way those daggers are shaped, and the scabbards for them. The traditional daggers have that turn to them, the curve. And I always wondered, I don't know if I've ever seen the blades. Are the blades curved as well? How do you get that thing in and out of there? And if they're not curved, why do they have that? I don't really know. Someone knows, and they'll tell me. It is unclear if the Saudis knew about the fake furs or were deceived by a supplier. I'd kind of like to know about that. But Bruce Riedel High, I don't know, R-I-E-D-E-L, Riedel maybe, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and an expert on Saudi-U.S. relations, called the gifts highly embarrassing. They were embarrassing whether they were real or not, but this is an extra layer of embarrassment. The two most important things for them is to look like they're above-board world actors and are rich and show their wealth, he said. A spokeswoman for Mr. Trump did not return several messages seeking comment. Now, those disappearing gift bags are up next. As Trump political appointees in the State Department's protocol office packed up their belongings in January because they lost and they were getting kicked out, career officials saw their departing colleagues, leave with the gift bags meant for foreign leaders at the G7 summit the previous year. The Inspector General has learned. They just pilfered the stuff. The bags had been in storage in a large room at the State Department known as the Vault. So, like, they literally robbed the vault on the way out. Although maybe the vault isn't really a vault, but that's what they call it. Though I would be interested to find out whether there's any locking mechanism to it. Anyway, once the Biden administration took over, career officials began to examine the accounting of foreign gifts without Trump officials looking over their shoulders. And guess what? They found out all the stuff got stolen. At that point, career officials discovered that many of the gift bags were missing, as were more than a dozen additional presents given to Trump officials. The number was unusual. Government documents from the Obama and George W. Bush administrations show no unaccounted gifts given to the White House or given to White House officials, cabinet members, or members of the first families. None, zero. But dozens for the Trump guys. In the months that followed, the Times located Many of the gifts including a bottle of perfume and a Persian silk carpet that the Qataris had given to Stephen Mnuchin, the former Treasury Secretary. His gifts were supposed to have been sent to the General Services Administration for disposal, but they were sitting in storage at the Treasury Department. The bottle of whiskey for Mr. Pompeo remains unaccounted for, as does the 22-carat gold coin and a porcelain bowl from Vietnam for John Bolton, hero of the Republic, mustache of freedom. Mr. Trump's third national security advisor, you may know him as, who sent the Times an email exchange with the Trump White House showing that he never took it and did not want it. But it's missing. But you know what? I mean, maybe he didn't take it. And Donald Trump said, well, I'll take it then. And pocketed it and said, put down that they gave it to Bolton. One mystery has been solved. When the Times reached out to Mrs. Pence, a lawyer for the family said that she had taken the gold-toned place card holders, after a White House ethics lawyer told her she could keep them because they had been appraised at less than the minimal threshold, which was $390 at the time. But, according to the information provided to the State Department by the Trump White House, Mrs. Pence should have paid for the place card holders. Okay. So she's entitled to keep them because they're under the threshold, but the usual practice is you can keep them, but you got to pay for them. And she said, maybe I won't. Under federal guidelines, if a U.S. official is given multiple gifts in a meeting with a foreign official, the American must pay for them if the total exceeds the minimal threshold. So there's a little gray area there. The State Department said the Trump White House reported that Mrs. Pence had received the cardholders along with a framed print and a clutch purse, which totaled $1,200, therefore above the threshold. Richard Cullen, the lawyer for the Pence family, said the State Department was wrong. No, the department is wrong. The gifts had been given at different meetings, and Mrs. Pence had declined to keep the print and clutch. In response to Cullen's explanations, the State Department spokesman said it stood by its characterization of Mrs. Pence's gifts. So that's the end of the article. They always find a way to end these things like awkwardly. Do they? I always wonder whether someone like the writer here, Mike Schmidt, is sitting there at the end saying, God, how do I wrap up this article? And then they just go, deadline, and, pull the thing. Back when they used typewriters, that's the pulling it out of the... Does everybody recognize that sound, or are you too young? Anyway, doesn't matter. I just find those endings weird. So that's the gist of it. There's some linked stories here from way back when. Let's see, in August of 2021, one about the $5,800 bottle of whiskey that's supposedly missing. One from March of 2019, when foreign leaders send presidents a gift. Flattery is usually a theme. And back in September of 2017, Trump gifts from Saudi Arabia, tiger fur robes and chiffon dresses. So the Times reported on it too. So maybe that's why they don't credit the Daily Beast, because I said the Daily Beast was from October. Am I wrong about that? Let me open that up and see when they reported, because it's September in 2017 that the Times was writing about it. So I don't know. Oh, now I want the date to see whether or not this is really a legitimate complaint from Ken Klippenstein here. The date is covered up by the firewall pop-up. So, I don't know. I mean, the Daily Beast is a pretty relatively reputable publication. I don't know what it is about Ken Klippenstein, and I keep thinking he's full of it, but who knows? And no, Pocket View won't give me the date. So any of you want to look at it, I'll give you the link in the roundup and see what you can find out about it. Oh, okay. Dave R. emailing me about WFT, right? And I couldn't figure out what was going on. WTF, I understand. WFT. That's the Washington football team. You remember the breadsticks. They couldn't come up with another name, and they're still going by the WFT instead. That came up in the John Gruden story, I guess. I don't remember what the context was. Was there some sort of investigation going on? Are they investigating the WFT as well? What the hell? They might as well. Why not? Anyway, it never really struck me that WFT is WTF, but in different. Anyway, I kind of like that, and that's the only thing I've ever liked about that team is that they're just going with Washington football team, and they might as well just stick with it. There's something to it now. It's got cachet, if you will. All right. Let's see. Other stories worth checking in on in the end of our third segment and leading into our fourth segment, which is for Joan. We reserve for her. See what she wants to discuss at that point. But okay, let's see. I'm going to throw this one in here. Maybe I should make note. Alongside of his ridiculous Ashley Babbitt cameo appearance on video from Donald Trump, there is more from another tell-all book. There's another one out there and more ridiculous stories, and we got to catch up on which one it is. It is Jonathan Karl's book. So he's going on various, Jonathan Karl's from ABC, and he's going on various ABC shows to give excerpts of the book, just as the Washington Post was the one excerpting all the book tidbits from Woodward and Costa. So anyway, this new tidbit comes from Jonathan Karl. Trump boasted of crowd size at January 6th riot, new book says. Not just his inauguration, but also at the riot. And the gist of this report is basically that whoever the sources were telling Jonathan Karl that he was having a good time watching the riot on TV, or watching reports about the riot on TV, rather than, doing anything to try to stop it, of course, which is what everybody expected he really was doing, and is part of the reason why there was no lockdown going on at the White House, even though there was an insurrection ongoing inside Washington, D.C., and the second, third, and fourth in line to the presidency were under threat of death at the time. No reaction by the Secret Service at the White House because he was directing the coup. Obviously, he was in no danger. Anyway, Betrayal, I guess, is the name of the Jonathan Karl book, which is a great title. Betrayal, the final acts of the Trump show. Cast in the right light, but, once again, whatever, buy the book and and he'll sign it for you. And nothing real about, we should be executing Donald Trump. That's the real outcome of things like this in most of the real world, for most of real world history. But instead, I don't know, we turn it into tell-all books and we marvel at what happened. All right. Let's see. Other items worth sharing. Gosh. I don't know which direction to go, but we'll try and cram in three of them. I guess closer to the thievery and cheetah fur stories and the Trump boasting about crowd size is news that the Government Oversight Committee, I guess, Jerry Connolly, one of the members from, a Democratic member from Virginia, was tweeting over the weekend about how their investigation is going. And I grabbed this from Blue Virginia, and they, because Connolly's from Virginia, grabbed the series of his tweets that probably summarizes the situation better than the Government Oversight Committee report to which Connolly links here. But Jerry Connolly now, it says, has evidence, quote, Donald Trump hid debts, concealed millions in losses, and received millions more from foreign governments at the Trump Hotel. Yes, it's a foreign emolument story once again. What's going to happen? I don't know. Nice work, says the Blue Virginia proprietor, Lokel, as we all know him online. Nice work. Now, when is Trump going to be arrested, charged, and convicted for his many crimes? Oh, well. Also, don't forget that Glenn Youngkin, still running for governor here, and we still got to take care of that, has said he's honored to have Trump's endorsement, and also that President Trump represents so much of why I'm running. Enough said. Now, please vote Democratic up and down the ballot, unless you want Virginia run by someone who actually thinks that the insurrectionist and criminal Trump is someone to emulate. Good side note about the Virginia elections there. Now, Jerry Connolly's tweets from when? I don't remember. A couple of days ago. Breaking. After 5 years of investigation, Representative Carolyn Maloney and I have obtained evidence that Donald Trump hid debts, concealed millions in losses, and received millions more from foreign governments at the Trump Hotel. Despite the precedent set by every modern American president, during his term in office, President Trump retained his financial interest in his various business entities, including the Trump Hotel. The hotel opened to the public in September of 2016, just weeks after Trump accepted the nomination for president. Throughout his term, there were numerous reports about foreign and domestic interests patronizing the Trump Hotel as a way to curry favor with the president. For more than 5 years, Oversight Dems, and that's their Twitter handle for the group, Oversight Dems has been investigating conflicts of interest related to GSA's, General Services Administration, same people, GSA's management of the Trump Hotel's lease. Under Trump, GSA failed to substantially comply with the committee's requests. And at the same time, they were in charge of making sure that he wasn't stealing all the gifts. How did that go? More on that here, he says, referring to his own November 22nd, 2020 tweet, in which he says, I've seen several recent stories in the press that seem to point to a coordinated attempt to portray GSA, General Services Administration, the administrator, GSA Emily, that's her Twitter handle, as some kind of unassuming apolitical bureaucrat. My subcommittee oversees GSA. I know Administrator Murphy, Emily Murphy. She is a Trump loyalist through and through. Now, on with his tweet thread. On July 9th, 2021, GSA finally produced a subset of documents, including the hotel's audited financial statements, 3 years' worth of documents that were submitted to GSA to win the federal lease, and communications between Trump's businesses and GSA regarding the lease. The lease, of course, still one of the more serious emoluments issues in my view, and Armando's, that's been overlooked, but not by Jerry Connolly. These documents show, 1, President Trump reported massive earnings at the Trump Hotel to conceal over $70 million in losses. 2, while in office, Trump received preferential treatment potentially worth millions from a foreign bank. 3, the Trump Hotel received over $3.7 million from foreign governments. 4, President Trump concealed debts when bidding on the old post office building lease in order to get the building in the first place. 5, the Trump Hotel moved around millions of dollars in opaque transactions with other Trump businesses. We on Oversight Dems have been relentless in our pursuit of accountability for the thinly veiled criminal enterprise Donald Trump ran from the Oval Office. The investigation does not stop here. And then he says, read the documents in our full letter to GSA here over at the House Oversight website. The link given here, and you can read it. It's probably pretty dry, but substantial allegations about which, who knows what will be done. Probably a lot of pointing and laughing in the press. But it's real, and it's out there. And we're not doing much about it. Just thought I would point that out for you. Let's see. Getting close to the end of our segment. Last segment being reserved for Joan. Something I'll have to save for later on today. But Scott Anderson sent me something extra about Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day. Or I guess I should say Columbus Strike Through Indigenous Peoples Day. Not slash. But, a lot of, posturing about that yesterday from the white supremacist wing and from the proud Italian Americans who were upset about losing their holiday. And this is kind of interesting background about how we got where we were and how we got Columbus Day in the first place. A lot of that background material mentioned in another piece that we read, but the one that Scott sent me has some additional stuff that I think would make for good reading. But maybe to read on the air, maybe tomorrow. Anyway, only got a few minutes left. Let's read this, because this could be of some interest to discuss with Joan. Don't know if she wants to bring this up, but picked up the Plumb Line piece from the other day, Greg Sargent, making the case for something that's been mostly overlooked in the big-time reconciliation bill. Biden is close to a big win that would strike at the core of Trumpism. That sounds good. What's it all about? As if the stakes riding on President Biden's agenda weren't already sky high, one of its most obscure provisions suddenly looks very plausible, which in turn offers the promise of a real democratic answer to one of Donald Trump's ugliest legacies, right-wing populist nationalism. That is pretty bad. And this is an obscure approach to dealing with it, and I'm not entirely clear. I mean, it's not a straight line, but it makes some sense. We're talking about the global minimum tax. Not very exciting sounding. Because the debate over this policy is excruciatingly dry and complex, and because other major provisions have prompted Democratic infighting, the true political and ideological possibilities here have escaped notice. It's now becoming clear that the U.S. policy changes needed to make the global minimum tax a reality will likely be in the big bill that Democrats hope to pass via reconciliation. On Sunday, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told ABC News she fully expects this to happen. This comes after more than 130 nations reached a deal Friday, just Friday, to participate in a minimum 15% levy on corporations to stop the, quote, race to the bottom among nations competing for multinational corporations. All of this contains the seeds of a democratic response to the populist nationalism that Donald Trump reshaped the GOP around. It displays how negotiated multilateral settlements can help mitigate some of the degradations of globalization that right-wing nationalism purports to address, albeit with fake solutions. The central feature of a global minimum tax is an agreement by each nation to, quote, top up taxes paid by their corporations on overseas profits to 15%. This would capture revenue from companies that use numerous clever bookkeeping tricks to stash profits in lower tax venues. Right-wing nationalists are supposed to hate such elite chicanery. After all, international capital mobility and profit shifting are two key ways that multinationals have emerged as big winners from globalization. This has deprived the nation of revenue while allowing multinationals access to elite tax avoidance strategies that ordinary Americans lack. Very interesting, but yeah, kind of obscure. Not an easily followed straight line to why it would undo Trumpism. Hey, Joan, how you doing?
Hello, I'm fine. How are you?
Okay. Got any tiger or cheetah robes to declare? Nothing like that? Isn't that awesome? Like he's outfitting the guy for Tiger King or whatever. Liberace's house. Pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. It's all open. You can cover anything, even if you just wanted to come and laugh about the robes.
That limits federal reconciliation, the usual.
Boring. Okay, yeah.
And we have Demon Pass coming.
Oh yeah, that's right. I saw somebody tweeting about that yesterday, and I was just talking about that because what was it the other day? Ted Cruz was saying something about Democrats they're always making up terms to make Republican policies sound bad or something. Some weird complaint. I'm glad to see it back. It's fun. All right, let's please remind us of that.
Okay.
All right, coming back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. It's that time again. Joan McCarter is with us, thankfully taking us away from the rather dry subject of the global minimum corporate tax. But maybe we'll spend some time investigating that again later today, unless that sparks interest for you.
Well,
But it could.
I am kind of interested in it. I haven't
Yeah.
spent a lot of time looking at it. I've just seen it sort of floating around in the background, wondering,
Yeah, it's
what's this?
right.
How's that going to go over?
I don't know. It's
When people see that it's coming. So
yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and Greg makes a good point, and it's not easy to see it immediately, as in dramatic terms, as he points out, saying it may undo one of the major tenets of Trumpism, but it does set up nicely in that it's a tax hike. So you'd think immediately Republicans go, rah, and they go crazy about it. And they have. They've been screaming about it. But at the same time, it does sort of strike at the heart of the Trumpist message. Like, this is about making sure that American companies can't hide their profits overseas or move jobs overseas, or foreign companies can't exploit American markets and then spirit the money away and never pay any taxes on it. So this is the kind of, when they complain about globalists and multinational corporations, which I guess they thought was something that they could steal from Democrats, complaining about multinational corporations. This was their complaint, that they weren't paying their fair share and they were, siphoning jobs out of the U.S. and hiding the profits. And here somebody's actually addressing it. And as Craig points out, addressing it with a multilateral negotiated settlement with 130 different countries, which is something Trump could never have pulled off and never would have even tried because he hates the idea of it. But I imagine that, by tomorrow it will be the, oh my God, the international grandma tax. What?
Undoubtedly. That, so far it's sort of flown under the radar, which I think is really interesting. So,
yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that comes out. But I imagine they'll name it something ridiculous, or mandatory abortion something. I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with anything, but that's what they'll call it. Which actually brings us around to something that you said you did have on your radar. Now that I think about it, among the many must-pass BFD bills still looming and still unpassed, and fiscal crises put off until December, which is a great time to try to fix things.
Yes.
We have, I guess, the return of one of the all-time most disingenuously named and attacked parliamentary maneuvers is coming back.
It's coming
What's
back.
going on?
Deem and pass.
Yes. AKA, of course, demon pass. That came back to mind.
Less inflammatorily, a self-executing rule.
Yes. That's what they're
Although
really
it's,
known as.
execution, so.
Oh, yes, right. Although, that's hot right now. So,
what this means is that the House is going to pass the debt ceiling hike today, but they're not going to have an actual recorded vote on the debt ceiling hike. The thing that Ted Cruz forced upon all of his colleagues last week. A recorded vote.
Yes, right. No one really wanted
I thought
to do
that was fun. Republicans were ready to say, okay, just let the Democrats do this. Let's just do it by unanimous consent or whatever, simple majority. Ted Cruz insisted that all of his colleagues vote on the bill. So.
They thank him for that. People, I guess Republicans in the Senate needed reminding how much they hated Ted Cruz. 4 years of Donald Trump made them all secretly hate Donald Trump even more, though they could never say it. And that occupied all their time, and they forgot how much they hated him, and now he's reminding them.
Yes.
Cool.
I can't think what else he was doing.
I don't know.
He relishes their hate.
Him. I guess so. Don't know why, but I don't know. That's what he does in life. But he also was on my mind recently because I had seen him tweeting a couple of days ago. I'll have to scroll back and see if I can find it. But he was busy accusing Democrats of something. And in this case in particular, it was that accusing Democrats of being the ones who are distorting Republican policies and giving them evil-sounding names in order to score PR points. And obviously Republicans never did this. Immediately came to mind was Demon Pass, and I didn't even know we were going to be doing it. But,
and here you go.
Yeah, it came back. I said it, and then I was...
Don't you love when a plan comes together?
Right, exactly. I had no idea. I didn't think we had this problem, but... yeah, maybe that's it. I tweeted, oh yeah, what about Demon Pass? That's what you called it when we did the self-executing rule. And, not that he acknowledged me or anything. But then I wonder, did someone read that and say, oh, damn, that's right. That's how we can take care of the debt ceiling. I forgot.
I'm sure that's what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly. The government mostly runs off of my Twitter account.
Yeah.
Yeah. In large part. It should, if it doesn't.
It should.
And
if it did, we would get rid of the filibuster, and we would, have Roe v. Wade codified for the land.
Yeah.
We would have the Voting Rights Act restored. We would have lots of things, including not having a fight over the debt ceiling.
Right.
And possibly even not having a fight over budget reconciliation and what's going to be in the bill, which is probably going to dominate the conversation in the House among Democrats.
Yes.
At least those who show up to vote in person for this Demon Pass.
Yes.
Rather than by proxy.
Right.
Because last night, sneakily, Nancy Pelosi sent out a little missive that is kind of a bomb for progressives, saying she has overwhelmingly heard from her membership that they would rather do fewer things well in the Build Back Better plan, which sounds to a lot of people like Nancy Pelosi wanting to do what Nancy Pelosi has wanted to do all along, and that's shore up the Affordable Care Act and secure that legacy.
I see.
As opposed to doing a lot of really other big things to help people, like give all people on Medicare hearing, vision, and dental coverage, or fund universal pre-K, or any number of things. So, this is going to be interesting to see what gives.
Right. Well, there was that debate, as there always is, about, once you've agreed or been forced to constrain the amount of money you're committing to the bill, trying to figure out, do more things for shorter amount of time, or less things for a longer amount of time, but fully fund them. I think most actual moderates versus the people that have been calling moderates lately do tend to, I guess in their own personal decision making, there's those aphorisms of, do a few things, do the things you do them right. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. Although it wasn't clear that it was wrong to do lots of things for 5 years and that they would be done well for 5 years. And the idea was, if we do them well for 5 years, then at the end of 5 years, it'll be very difficult not to continue doing them. But
which was, a lot of the impetus behind the Affordable Care Act.
It worked pretty well for that.
It worked pretty well, the stuff.
But I guess we had 10 on that.
Yeah,
at least.
We had 10 on that, but still.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a frustrating message from her, particularly considering that most of these centrists, the majority who are telling her they want to do just a little bit and do it really well, are not saying then what has to come out of the larger plan. They are refusing to show their hands on what they want to see cut. Because everything that's in there is overwhelmingly popular. People really like all of these ideas. They want paid family leave. They want universal pre-K. They want the child tax credit to keep coming to them every month.
Yeah. Even Ivanka Trump said that was good.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff that people really like here. And I don't understand how the centrists can keep getting away with not saying, these are the decisions I'm making. This is the stuff I want cut. Other than Kyrsten Sinema, and Joe Manchin, being pretty obvious that they want to cut out all of the climate stuff.
Yeah. But no, they never say anything. And, that's such a moderate thing, ordinarily saying what you want. But oddly, they shy away from it because, as it turns out, they realize that, yeah, I guess if the things are popular, then cutting them obviously would be unpopular. And, why the reaction to that isn't, let's do those things then. I don't know. We just had, the whole weekend was dominated by this weird, wonky discussion about whether or not they should or shouldn't spend all their time trying to figure out what's popular and then do those things. And then they're on the table, and then they all said, yeah, we totally agree. We should be doing things that are popular, like the wonks say. Like, first of all, let's undo all of this popular stuff and not do it. Are you sure? Did you read the same thing I read? I don't understand. I mean, I didn't agree with it, maybe, but I thought I was being told that moderates were definitely all in on this thing.
Doing the popular stuff.
Yeah, and then the first thing I hear on Monday is, let's make sure we do less of the popular stuff. All right. I mean, well, not all right, but I just don't understand how we landed there. I understand the money situation, but then why? I guess I don't understand how I got yelled at a whole weekend. The
situation is also kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I guess there's that. Okay, well that's true. Yeah, but they,
because
I
over 10 years, clearly 3.5 trillion isn't really a whole lot of money when we're talking about the gross domestic product of the United States.
Yeah. Actually,
for instance, we contrast it with defense spending when we are no longer having a war in Afghanistan.
Right. What happened to? We used to call those who say we're gonna have a peace dividend, but I guess that fizzled so badly we didn't want to use that again. But
yeah, you can't. Yeah.
So well, it always was a little weird, and I did take out the calculator on that. You're right about the amount of money. Obviously, I mean, it is math. I checked it out, and I remember I guess this was when Manchin was saying, complaining about, I don't want to make people feel like we're an entitlement society again, as though we ever had been. But, and I pulled out the calculator and said, what is $3.5 trillion? Now, of course, it's over 10 years. We keep stressing that. And then obviously it's $350 billion a year. But then I thought, what if you just there's no program. I'm just dividing it up and giving the appropriate portion to everyone in America, right? Like, what sort of entitlement are we talking about? And I think I got like, what was it, like $600 a year for
every person in America.
Just give it away. There's no program. Here you go. Cash. Entitlement. The ultimate entitlement. We're just going to appropriate money out of the Treasury for you. And people are going to like quit work and have no work ethic and not know the value of anything. Kids are going to be dropping out of school. Dogs and cats living together. The whole thing. If it was a straight giveaway, I don't think anybody would feel entitled about that at all. I mean, it would change a lot of lives for people who have no access to cash. Yes, but they wouldn't say, now I don't have to work. They would say, well, I paid off some credit card bill and we kept the lights on. Time to go back to work so I can do it again because there's not another $600 coming.
Right.
So I never understood that. And then the whole idea of, I guess, well, trillions, big number, but I guess that's supposed to be it. It's scary sounding, so that's it, and nobody gets to go to the dentist. All right.
I guess so.
That doesn't seem like it's popular.
Tell us if that's what you mean, that your grandma can't go to the dentist and get her teeth fixed so that she can eat.
Yes.
Yeah, if that's what you don't want us to have, tell us. Tell us that's what you want us to have.
Yes. And who is asking you to do that? I mean, I don't really believe the insure people are lobbying that much,
No.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know who thinks it's a popular thing. But...
Well, the dentists actually don't like that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess
because they don't want to end up being where a lot of doctors have ended up being and having to accept Medicare and Medicaid rates.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, they do have a point. We'll be tying ourselves in knots over the dentist fix now.
Yeah.
On top of the
doc
fix.
They still have a lot of patients that have to pay through the nose for their services. Yeah. Taking on a few disabled or elderly people who, it would be nice if they could eat. And maybe you don't get paid the thousands of dollars you do for every other person on private insurance. suck it up, dentists. Everybody else has.
Probably. Yeah, and they probably get paid plenty anyhow. I suppose. I wonder if it works out in the end. Like, lots of people come in and accrue big bills, but how much are you spending chasing them for the money and then not getting it?
Right.
I guess is another question. But, all right. Well,
Now the ADA is going to come after me.
well.
But, you know.
Well, what
dentists,
are they going to do? Right.
They're, well.
Dentists aren't popular.
Isn't
generally
Paul
speaking.
Gosar a dentist?
Maybe.
One of them is.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Who knows? I mean, I don't know whether to believe it or not. I mean, given Rand Paul, like, is he really a dentist? I don't know.
Self-certified.
Maybe not. I don't know if yeah. Dentists generally, I mean, I don't know. Not the most popular. People say, glad I have one, but I don't really love going. Nice guy, but might not want him to make policy. Not so much. Paul Gosar just not a nice guy, obviously. We know that.
No. His entire family will tell you so.
Yeah. I find that amazing that you can survive that. But, okay. Well, there's a lot of nuts in his district, and, well, that's a whole other can of worms. You could spend a day on why that is. All right. Well, let's see. What other items are on
That's
your
just
agenda?
where we're at today on those things. We're still leading toward December 3rd as the Armageddon Day. Although supposedly, I saw from Punchbowl from Jake Sherman in a tweet that actually they can probably end up having more money. I mean, the Treasury can go beyond December 3rd. They can go possibly even into January.
Yeah, that was rumored.
With the amount of funding that they agreed to in the Senate. So.
Oh, okay.
So that, that's a little bit of a breather there, which I don't know that we necessarily have to hear. Because I think urgency maybe is sort of necessary. But at the same time, December 3rd is when the continuing resolution funding government ends. So as usual, we have a massive, horrible fight ahead of us. And as usual, Mitch McConnell has retaken the debt ceiling hostage.
Oh, yes.
Sent a really nasty letter to Biden on Friday saying, okay, we did it this time. We're never, ever, ever doing it again.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether to believe him or not. That's always the big question. And I thought being nasty and partisan was bad. They were pretty clear about that the other day after Schumer made a speech, and they said, oh, my God, this is obviously the worst thing that ever happened to the country. He said some partisan things. I don't know whether the excuse was the door is now open for partisanship, or it's just okay when we do it, or they don't bother to make excuses.
It's always just okay when they do it.
Yeah, that's the underlying premise they operate on. But,
the thing about that really got to me, and what always gets to me is Joe Manchin.
Going up to.
Did you see the video?
I didn't see the video. I heard about.
He sat himself right behind Chuck Schumer when Chuck Schumer was making this statement. And I don't know whether he knew what was coming and decided he'd have to try this, or it was just coincidence. But that's where he happened to be sitting on the floor. And melodramatic gnashing of teeth and rending of garments while Schumer was giving this. Finally, he had his hands over his face and shaking his head. And finally, he got up and walked out.
In a huff.
Wow. And then, of course, joined Republicans in attacking Schumer for saying mean things about them.
Yeah.
Because that helps.
Well, yeah. I guess I kind of expected that. I didn't think to look for the video, though. That would be that'd be funny. It's very performative, I guess.
Very performative.
Well,
yes.
That's Joe Manchin. So, okay. Gets an Oscar or an Emmy, I guess, because it was on C-SPAN.
It would be an Emmy, yes.
Right. Okay. We'll just make sure that we get the awards right for him. Okay. Well, I'll take a look at that one. So let's see. So, was there any other aspect of the letter besides it just being angry and bitter? I mean, you can't call it a hostage note. I mean, there's no way to free the hostage, right? Or is this just a notice that we're going to murder this thing?
Well,
there's no way to win it back, right?
this isn't going to happen again. This time we really mean it. This time we're really not going to help you not blow up the global economy. You're on your own.
So what do you do with that? I mean, there's no concession that they want in order to agree to it. That's just, this is the end of the global economy in December?
Yeah, you guys have to fix it on your own.
Well, then I'm going to curtail my Christmas shopping.
Right.
I'm not going to do it.
Right.
You.
One of the things that could be happening here is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and every manufacturing entity and every corporate entity could be coming back to Mitch McConnell and saying, yeah, you're not really helping us out in terms of the stock market right now. You're not really doing a lot to create confidence closing out this quarter.
Yeah, I mean,
perhaps it would be helpful if you weren't making these public statements. They're not doing that, and I don't know why they're not doing that, or at least they're not doing it publicly.
Yeah, maybe they're just taking some time off. After Thanksgiving, we'll tell them, and we'll give ourselves a week to make it work. I mean, it does. I don't know what to do with this, right? If there's no demands, and that did remind me all this time when they were saying they have no demands, that I'm so old I remember that you couldn't be taken seriously as a political actor unless you had demands. Thinking back to like Occupy Wall Street, they're nothing. Right. What are their demands? Well, there's no demands here, and then they're just saying there's no deal that can be struck. We're not going to do it, and you're going to be back in the same position. And I mean, is he explicit about filibustering, or is he just saying we're not going to help? And
he's saying we're not going to help.
Might mean that he doesn't filibuster.
He's still trying to force them to do it in the reconciliation bill.
Yes, okay. All right.
Take him up on that. Do what Greg Sargent suggested. Put it in the reconciliation bill and say, okay, the number that we're putting on it is the number that is the national debt at any given time. So the debt ceiling will always be indexed to the national debt, and there you go. There's your number. It's done. You don't have this hostage anymore.
Yeah.
Ever again.
That's I don't know. I mean, maybe they ought to. I've always thought they should have it as a backup. They always should have the instruction, because you never know when you're going to run into. I guess you can tell when you're not close to the debt ceiling, but I'm confused as to why they didn't have that as an option, and why Democrats continue to say they won't do it no matter what, unless it's
one of the arguments that has some validity is that the parliamentarian and again, is this really a valid thing, or is this really the parliamentarian is an employee of the Senate and not the one who sets the rules, but the one who advises on the rules? But anyway, the official argument is that if you put debt ceiling hike in budget reconciliation, you have to put a number on it because of the Byrd rule.
Right. That's what they say.
It has to have a specific number. Although we've seen from various legal scholars that say, no, you don't really have to have a number. You can say the number is whatever the national debt is right now.
Mm-hmm. Because that'll have
You can also say the parliamentarian is not the rule maker. The parliamentarian is the rule advisor, and she can be overruled.
Yes. So that's I mean, maybe that's the thing to do. I did see one other suggestion floated. I mean, it's related to what Greg Sargent said. Instead of making the number be whatever the debt is at the time, although that's a permanent solution and perfectly fine. But if the idea was possible to say, well, the number is, go look here for your number. Former Senate aide and Twitter personality Ira Goldman had tweeted the other day, what about if you make the number by which you hike the debt ceiling the amount by which the national debt increased during the term in office of the 45th President of the United States? Right? So, all right, he raised the national debt this much, and we got to add that much to the debt ceiling. There's your number. It's defined by, just go ask, I guess, the Treasury what that number was. And if you want to, Google who was the 45th President of the United States, if you want to figure out what's going on here.
I believe that would be 7.8 trillion.
Okay, then. That's
if
a good
I remember
number.
correctly from some research I did last week.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you're up to date on it, so good. And right. I mean, it's as much a number as Greg Sargent's number. Greg's doing like a more, even-handed and nice thing.
Yes.
But they could certainly do that, and as much as the parliamentarian might object, as you mentioned, it's ultimately their call, and they don't even have to overrule her. They just say, I got your advice. And I found some countervailing advice that was better. Right.
Yeah.
So that's okay. They don't have to fire her to do that. They don't have to overrule her to do it. They just say, that's some interesting advice. But you know how it is. You get conflicting advice from time to time. And you got to make a decision.
So far we are not seeing a lot of pushback on the parliamentarian.
Yes. Well,
so
currently,
that brings up the other unknown in this whole effort, and that is whether DACA is going to be in it. Whether a path to citizenship for Dreamers.
Yes, that's another area where they could do the same thing and just simply say, your advice is interesting, but we just can't do it. Can't take care of it your way this time. But I guess pushback on the parliamentarian personally has ratcheted down since she's been in the hospital, I guess.
Yeah, so. She apparently has stage 3 breast cancer and is getting treatment for that. So,
so it doesn't have
people
to be
don't
personal.
say things about the parliamentarian, and that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. No, there's no reason to back. And again, I guess a good reason to frame this as it's not a rejection or we don't fire her or anything like that. We just say, I'm not taking your advice. I'm taking someone else's very good parliamentary advice. And you're fine, and you can keep your health care coverage, and you're a wonderful person. So,
right
there you go. We can handle
have
it
to
that
be
way.
Fired.
Right. Then, probably best that we not at this point.
I guess
that
wouldn't go over well with anybody.
Yeah. So, all right. So anyway, just so that people know that we've been keyed in on that. A lot of people have been about fire the parliamentarian. That has happened, but it's not necessary. And you can still get what you want. That's not a compromise even. So. Anyway, I thought I'd point that out too. All right. Well, so we do have some exciting times, to live through in the next couple of weeks. But I guess today we have our Demon Pass to watch. And that makes Ted Cruz happy. And I imagine they'll drag that accusation out and throw it in our faces. And hopefully we ignore it and laugh at it and say, well, the debt ceiling's taken care of, so...
Well, nobody pays that much attention to the House, so
yeah,
probably they won't. Who knows?
Right. And this is a great way to make sure that they don't. I mean, the wonks will, and I guess the reporters in D.C. will declare, oh, remember that when they used to call it that name? Well, that happened again. And then everyone will say, so what? And by the way, I'm only paying attention to John Gruden anyhow. So.
and that Southwest pilot sick out that none of the pilots are saying is a sick out.
Yeah, right. Still waiting on that.
Really helps us trying to organize a sick out that you're actually organized and you are publicizing that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, the secret sick out that we don't want anyone to know about. But yeah, amazing that no one has been able to, like I said, no TikTok videos about them doing this. Well, then it's probably not happening. Plus the denial. All right. Man, another crazy week. Well, I hope to hear from you again next week when we'll discuss many of the same crazy things over and over again.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. See you again next week.
Talk to you next week.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, okay, many of the same things will probably be open for discussion on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam next. But as usual, also a lot of areas that we were not able to touch on today. And guess what? He's got those queued up for you, especially when he takes his time to cast eyes around global news. Stay tuned.